Hey, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Releasing Your Inner Dragon with Drake and Marie. I am one of your hosts, Maxwell Alexander Drake, award-winning novelist, yada, yada, yada. As always, with me is my co-host, Marie.
Hi, I'm Marie. I'm a fantasy YouTuber and fantasy author.
And today on the podcast, we are going to take advantage of a very brave soul who decided to send us a snippet of their work for us to edit live on the air. So we're going to be doing that. If you're on the podcast, you may want to head over to YouTube and watch this on there so you can actually see the text as we're doing it. But we will try to expand upon things as much as we can to kind of make sure that you can follow along, even if you're just listening to this. As always, and I know you've heard it a million times, but obviously it needs to be said again. Please like, subscribe, share. You've got writer friends out there. They need help too.
I do also just want to say that thank you very much to everybody who has helped us cross the 5,000 downloads
Wow.
milestone.
I did not
And
know
in
that.
the last month, we have received another 500 downloads. So
Nice.
yeah.
So we're just going to jump right into it because these always tend to run long. We have a lot to say anytime we're editing anything. So we're going to share the screen and we're just going to kind of jump into it. And we're going to let Marie read a couple paragraphs. We'll talk about them and then we'll move on. In the past, we focused a lot in on the actual line edits, grammar-based stuff. We are going to do that, but there is some pretty interesting things to talk about from a story level standpoint. So we're going to try to take a step back with this, which means we are going to have to probably read the whole thing and then kind of get into that. But
okay, so there will be no future if there never was a past. I'm trying and trying, but all I get is pain, silence. Deep in the jungle of the interwebs, I am trying to make my presence known and leave my mark, but I can't get noticed. A quiet life is not for me. I don't want to die a nobody. I want to be remembered for all times, going out in a blaze of glory. I go to my bedroom mirror and apply my makeup. Foundation, blush, curl my blonde hair, blue eyeshadow, lashes to the nines, and of course, that cherry red lipstick. I turn on the bright lights of my vanity and get ready to fire up my webcam. It's time to live stream to my followers. I check myself out one more time in the mirror. Damn, girl, you look good. I always say it to myself to boost my confidence. But I have to admit, this morning I do look good. I leave a big red smooch on the mirror as a final good luck kiss, open up my laptop and get started. Good Saturday morning, followers. It's your girl Jane here, ready to give you some of that tasty influence. No need to wonder what products to buy. I've got all the answers for you right here. Now, who wants to pay $5 for a super chat to ask me a question on a product to buy? I ask. Sadly, I only get 4 out of the $5 after paywall gets its cut. If only there was a way for my followers around the world If only there was a way my followers around the world could pay me directly without the need for an intermediary. Sigh, a girl can dream. I check for any text replies.
all right, actually, I want to start off right off the bat talking about a story related thing. The opening paragraph has two separate tones in it. And then when we get to the second paragraph and on down, we have a third tone of the story. So that opening sentence, there will be no future if there never was a past. That is a very prophetic, very deep kind of thought.
Yeah.
That is dark. The remainder of the paragraph about I want to be somebody and I don't want to die a nobody. And if I don't get noticed, I am a nobody. That's a very selfish. It's still the same kind of tone where it's dark, but it's very selfish. So the first one is much more of a societal thing. It's not I won't have a future if I don't have a past. It's much more this big, gigantic, all-encompassing thing. I read that line and I go, oh, this is going to be a feast for the soul of this. And then I get to the rest of that paragraph, and it's like, oh no, it's going to be, a much more petty kind of journey that I'm going to take. But then I hit the second paragraph, and it goes from petty to shallow, like I don't even like mirage level shallow. In other words, you from a distance you might think there's some water there, but there isn't even water there to call it shadow. It literally was just a mirage.
It
And
almost is caricaturish to me.
yeah,
Like it is a caricature of a popular girl.
yeah.
Now, I don't know, maybe such people do exist. I don't know.
Oh,
I've
100% they
never
did.
met them.
100% they did.
Yeah.
100%. And that's the thing, when I give my character building a character class where I talk about, dynamic characters, when I get down to talking about tertiary characters and talking about how they need to pop off the page and everything like that, inevitably somebody in the class will be like, well, wait a minute now. I work with two-dimensional cardboard cutout people. Like, that's real. And I'm like, yes, that is real. And that's also what readers are trying to escape by going into a fiction world. They want to escape the cardboard, crappy cutout people. This is drama. It's entertainment. It's not cardboard cutout Jane, the secretary that wears the same blouse every day, 5 days a week, and has the same look on her face. And like, yes, I get that those people are real, but the problem is that by this, so the first line hooked me. The first paragraph made me groan. By the time I got to the end of this that you read, I would have put it down. I would have walked away. And it's so there's a couple things I think about here. I'm not saying don't have a shallow character. You absolutely can. The problem is if you have a character that is going to be shallow, that is going to be an instant dislike for the reader. But you started them there so you could have this massive growth as the character grows through, the process of this journey that they're about to take. And yes, the lower the low, the higher the high. That's just the way it is. So maybe there is going to be a moment here in the future where I'm going to be like, oh, okay, I see now her, her growth, and I'm starting to like her more, whatever. But I'm never going to get there. You're going to lose me too fast with this character, especially, and I think it's even more egregious with that opening paragraph, because you gave this expectation to me in that opening line of a very deep thinking, deep enriching experience. And then by the second period, it had evaporated to a mirage. I think that also meant, like, maybe if you had just started at the second paragraph, I go to my bedroom mirror and apply my makeup, maybe I would have been a lot more forgiving. Like, okay, this character is going to grow, and I'm going to give her some time. But because of that opening paragraph, at least for me, as a reader, it really was kind of this bait and switch. And that always makes me frustrated when I'm reading. But you're right. You had said earlier, what you need is a hook. There is no hook. And hooks, opening a story, you need to have that hook in the opening paragraph 2, 3, 4 at the most. So we're looking at 4 paragraphs here, and there's just nothing. There's nothing that makes me want to follow this character. And I don't mean a hook for the story, because that's what I think that this author was trying to do. They tried to hook me into the story. So they're saying, look, I'm going to give you this really deep line at front. Give me enough time, and this story will validate or earn the right to have that line in this story. But the problem is I don't care yet. The whole point is, and again, there are ways to write stories, and I'm not the be all end all. And, there's literary fiction, there's all sorts of other ways. And so that's just the way it is. But you guys are here listening to us talk about how we write stories, and this is how we write stories. And how we write stories is that you hook the reader into the character as fast as possible. You make the reader care about the character, and then you hook the character into the story, which then by default hooks the reader into the story. But the first thing has to happen is you have to make the character and the reader connect. And so without that.
Yeah. And I think especially with this character, you were going to need a fast hook. So she needs to have a very human reason for this drive to get on the internet. Like, she needs to have some reason why she really needs the money.
And
I think
he gave her
whenever
a
you,
reason. He gave her a reason. It's, or I don't know if the author's male or female. The author gave a reason, but it's a petty reason. It's a,
yes,
if I don't get noticed, I'm just gonna die. Like,
yes,
it's this really petty reason for wanting to be famous. And
yes,
so, like, here's an example of what could have maybe, and it would have to be explored a little bit deeper than this, and it would have to be threaded through this entire thing. But case in point, the second paragraph, damn girl, you look good. I always say to myself to boost my confidence. But I have to admit, this morning I do look good. I mean, even if instead you wrote, but I have to admit, this morning I don't look good. Like, that level of self-doubt makes me go, oh, I'm like that. I project a level of confidence to the people in the real world around me, but inside I'm terrified. I mean, you guys have heard me talk about this all the time. The horrible, mean little 8-year-old girl that lives inside of me that hates my guts. You know, everyone has that. I have that. A lot of writers, especially professional writers, they don't like to admit that. They'll be like, oh no, I was just a great writer, and I just sit down and I just crank out great stories, and they don't want to talk about the times that they struggled for months with depression and wrote nothing because they couldn't figure anything out or whatever. Like I'm sorry, that's just not the reality. And if that is their reality, then God bless them. Like, I hate their guts, but God bless them, because I don't. That's just not real for me. That's not how I've ever experienced life. Life is work and toil and pain and misery. And so, like, even that self-doubt in this girl, the external, the external projection of perfection and the internal projection of, self-loathing that instantly would help me connect to this character better, because it would give her depth. It would give her something other than just this superficial Mary Sue kind of character right now. And I'm not saying she is. We haven't gotten far enough for that. But that's the way I see her right now.
yeah.
And so I stress this all the time. I cannot stress how important the first page is, the opening of the first page. It's not even the whole first page. It's the opening of that first page, and why it is so vital to get it right. And when, again, hook, we've talked about it. We've read some of my openings. We've read some of Marie's openings. The hook is not like, they're going to save the world. It's they, the garbage bag broke while they were carrying it out of the kitchen, and now they have to clean up all this mess. I mean, not necessarily like that, but I'm just saying the hook is very, very minor compared to what they're actually going to go through in this story. It's something that hooks the reader into the character and goes, oh man, I kind of relate to this character in that way. I'm not a teenage girl. I'm not putting on makeup. I'm not trying to be an Instagram, makeup
Sensation.
well, what is it? Makeup, what are they called?
Influencer.
Influencer. So I don't relate to any of that stuff. However, if she has internal doubts, that's a hook. That's something that makes me go, oh, okay, this character has some depth. I want to see where this goes. I want to see how it happens. So anyway.
I think from a purely line editing perspective, I have a couple of comments. I would replace the semicolon with an M dash personally. Here.
So I don't think an M dash goes there either.
Okay.
So
I think it's a full stop.
So what is a semicolon? A semicolon is separates two complete sentences that are similar in idea or connected in some way. What else separates two complete sentences? A period. What else connects two sentences that are similar in ideas? A paragraph. Like, I don't want to die a nobody. And so here's the other thing about it is, and we've talked about this before on the punctuation class. Punctuation is your tool as a writer to control the flow of the read. when there's a period, it is read, I don't want to die a nobody. I want to remember for all times going out in a blaze of glory. They become two separate pieces of information that the brain consumes. The semicolon doesn't work as well for that. It's I don't want to die a nobody. I want to be remembered. It's all one thing. It's all one piece. It doesn't make me go, I don't want to die a nobody and consume that piece of information and then consume the I don't want to be remembered. I want to be remembered for all times going out of a blaze of glory. I want to consume those separate, and I want my reader to consume those separate. So the way I do that is that period. Now, don't throw in my face, well, some people just speed read and they don't even see the periods. Yes, you're right. Some people do that, and they're not my fans because, I'm the type of writer that if you miss a sentence, you may miss the entire gist of the entire chapter. So my readers usually end up reading it 2-3 times to get all of the subtext and everything else that I've put into them, because I am so thick with my writing style. But that's epic fantasy. That is definitely not this genre. This genre does not need to be that thick. But still, yes, I agree with you on that. The semicolon, it just doesn't work as well. The M dash.
As a rule, I don't like using semicolons. Like, I do have a prejudice against them.
I do too.
Although
I use them.
I just my prejudice comes from programming, because to me, I will never read a semicolon as anything other than end of instruction.
Right. Yeah, but that's you personally.
Yeah, sure.
I do use them. There are times where I feel like they are the right choice. Everything that I write will have, a few scattered throughout. But we're talking, and I've never counted, but I would doubt there's more than 10 or 20 in a 200,000 word novel of mine.
That probably won't be in Magic Fall. I'll probably edit them all out.
Yeah, that's fine. Because again, if you use them correctly, and because if there is one, for those that don't know, me and Maria are actually co-writing a book together. If there is a time where I'm like, no, there's a semicolon needs to go here and I'm going to fight, I'm going to die on this hill, I'm pretty sure that if I give you my reasons for it, you will be like, okay, fine, I'll give you that one.
Probably. But I'll also probably point out that you can use an M dash for the same purpose. 9 times out of 10.
So, and this is where we differ on M dashes. For me, M dash is where you're not giving a complete sentence, but you're actually giving a little bit more information. So like if I was going to do this as an M dash, I don't want to die a nobody. M dash. Wait. It'd have to be, the first part would have to be rewritten. So forget about that. My brain's not there. I don't want to rewrite it. But if I was going to use an M dash there, it might be an M dash remembered for all times going out in a blaze of glory. Like, it's not a complete sentence, but it adds something to it. Again, I'd have to rewrite the beginning to make that work. You couldn't just put an M dash there and take out the I want to be. But for me, M dashes are more like that extra piece of information.
I tend to agree, but I just don't find semicolons to be that. Anyway.
Right. And I wouldn't use a semicolon here. I just wouldn't. I would use a period. Because I would want them. And for me, the reason is I want the reader to swallow, I don't want to die a nobody. I want you to grasp that specific concept by itself. And then I want you to, grasp the next concept. And so the period to me just works better for that.
The other thing that leaps out at me from a line editing perspective is I ask right there. There is zero need for that speech tag.
Yeah.
There is literally nobody else who can be talking at this point. We are alone.
But also, not only that, because you are 100% right. There's no one that could have said that line. So why do I have I asked?
Yeah.
I always hate the word asked after a question mark, because it's a question mark, which literally is a question mark. It's a mark of a question. So
yes and no. So if you use speech tags to identify who's talking, so I sometimes do this, right? I will sometimes have a question mark and then I will have Giselle asked, right? And the reason why is because I'm literally just identifying who said the line. And yes, I could say said.
No, you couldn't. I hate that even more.
Weird.
Yeah, I hate that even more. I hate the whole, question mark. He said, no, he didn't. He asked. In that case, if you're using speech tags and you do not want to put any other piece of information on that in that paragraph, and you just want a speech tag, then yes, I would go with I asked.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't write speech tags at all. So I've never written the word I asked or Drake asked or any of that stuff, literally. But, but, I do hate asked after question marks, shouted after exclamation points. I hate those
Well,
because the
yeah,
punctuation is already doing that job for you. Why are you wasting words?
exactly.
So like
I,
even in your case, I wouldn't write, Giselle asked. Um, I might write question mark Giselle's breath caught in her throat, waiting for an answer, something like that, because it's so much more. It gives me so much more than just Giselle asked.
mm,
So again, I don't use speech tags at all. So I'm very, very, very much against them. And don't do that. And I have to say this every time. This is my disclaimer. Do not follow me down the path of no speech tags. It causes you to work harder than you need to. It causes you to sometimes write, have to
yeah.
really do some linguistics gymnastics to make the uh the
It
thing
also
work when you could have
sometimes,
just wrote Drake said.
yeah, it also sometimes makes you overwrite a little bit because you have to
Yeah,
now invent actions
yes.
that people are taking.
All of those things, all of
Yeah.
those things. So don't follow me down this. Don't go, Drake said I don't, he doesn't use speech tags. So I'm not. It took me 30 years to get to the point where I'm at and using them flawlessly and nobody even notices. And that's why I
So
know I'm good at it, because no one's ever popped me on,
so
negative or good.
here is my advice to you in terms of speech tags. Is I do use speech tags, but when I do my final edit, I highlight all the speech tags. I have a macro that highlights said and asked because they are the only speech tags I allow. I do not have whispers or murmurs or any such shenanigans. Said and asked. I highlight them all, and I try to eliminate as many of them as possible, but not all of them.
Right. And that is a great advice. What I give to my private clients and my writers group people is, if there is anything else in the paragraph that in any way lets the reader know who is talking in this paragraph, that is all you need. So like
Yes.
in this instance, if we cut the word I asked out of that paragraph right there, as you just did, there's no difference in this paragraph. There is no chance of losing the reader. It is literally two words that I have to read that I don't need. They literally accomplish nothing. They are a waste. So like even if it was a shorter sentence, like, hey, how you doing? John said as he walked over and sat in the chair. Like, hey, how you doing? John walked over to the chair.
Yeah.
Like, it's all right. Give me the action. If there is any action in your speech tag, cut the speech tag. It is not needed. It's so much stronger to just have the character doing the action. If you've already written it. I mean, those are the ones that really kill me. If you just have, Drake said, Jane said, Drake said, Jane said, whatever. Okay, great. But if you have Drake said as he, whatever, then just have Drake do whatever. Like it's right there. The word said literally is wasted at that point. So that's my big philosophy. And one of the reasons why I'm also hyper focused on this is, I write really, really long. So, if I'm writing a 200,000 word novel, if I can cut out 10,000 words because I wrote the word said, and I guarantee you it would be in at least 10,000 times in that. That's a lot. It's a lot of less words that your reader has to read, considering they do no good. So yeah,
so that's the one thing. And the other thing that popped out at me was that I would put a paragraph break here. This is more personal.
Yes.
But I feel like without that paragraph break,
so she cut a paragraph after now who wants to pay me $5 for super chat? I'm sorry, what?
Yep. I said I put a paragraph break after the dialogue. Yep.
Wow. Yeah. The who wants to pay me $5 for a super chat, blah, blah, blah. And then it was sadly I only get 4 out of $5. So yeah, because it is a different topic. Remember, a paragraph is like information. So in the first one, she's actually talking to the camera and talking to the supposed audience. But in the next one, she's talking about a pay service that she uses. So they're very, very different topics.
And
Now,
I
that
do
being,
feel it needs a separation there.
yes. Now, sadly, I actually wouldn't put a paragraph break there. I would delete that entire paragraph.
Me too. But if
Because,
I kept it, I would put a paragraph right there.
right. Because why do I care that there is a pay service that she uses that takes 25% of her money? And that's not the point of this. The point of this is no one is hitting her up for her service. So I don't care that I mean, if she makes no money for the service, then paywall gets no 25% cut because there's no money to get a cut from. So it's information. Now, maybe this story is about paywall company, or maybe it's about the fact that 25% of everything you earn is always taken from somebody, by someone else. And if that's the case, then this is not a good place to introduce that theme that we're going to be playing with. We would want to do that in a different way, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, I think especially if you go with that, if you play on that idea of like, I don't look good, and that internal doubt,
Yes.
This would be a great paragraph right here, would be a great paragraph to be like, having having like a little bit of a panic attack internally, like my heart beats fast, I'm staring at the screen, like my fingers shaking on the keyboard as I'm waiting for somebody to say something.
Well, my eyes drift down. Am I alone in the room? My eyes drift down to the participants. No, there are 12 people in the room with me. Why is no one saying anything? Did I mess up my makeup? Do whatever. So yeah, there's all of this, all of this internal stuff that can happen that's going to connect me to the character. Now, the problem with us writing this is that we're creating a new character. The character we've created with this internal doubt is a different character than what is, presented here. So if the author is like, no, my character doesn't have any internal doubt, then everything we're suggesting is not going to help, because we're literally creating a different character for this story, which is one of the reasons why I hate editing other people's work from a plot standpoint and a character standpoint, because I don't know what the story is. I don't know where you're going. I don't know, whatever. But hopefully you can take this information and go, oh, but I know my character better. And so what I'm going to do because the problem is that you haven't hooked the reader to care about the character. And so if she is this superficial, then you can go, oh, now that you pointed this out, I can come up with a way that will solve this problem to get this happening. So that's the big thing. But going back to the paywall, and it's
in
cut
essence,
out of that.
This is a really good place to put in some internal conflict that will hook the reader into the character.
Right. Whatever that is.
Yeah.
We're going with the fact that, we both have internal insecurities, and we both think that internally we are terrible. So we're just projecting that on these characters. Wait a minute, don't go anywhere yet. So the other problem that I have, the biggest problem that I have with the, mentioning the paywall here and how it gets its cut and how the world works around me, is it comes back to, this is the opening page. This is the opening page. And I'm not saying you can't world build. I world build on the first page. In the first paragraph, I world build in almost everything that I write. But it's the world building that you do at the beginning of a story. And again, if you're following our philosophy, which is connecting the reader to the character and nothing else matters. Nothing else matters in the opening but connecting the reader to the character. And then it's about connecting them to the bigger scope, the bigger world, the bigger plot, the bigger, conflict, the bigger everything. If you follow that philosophy, then even though we world build in the opening paragraphs, in the opening, 2 or 3 paragraphs, the world building is very, very, very connected to the character and very important to the character, which, yes, it grows the world for the reader, but it also at the exact same time, it is also connecting the reader to the character. So, oh, wow, this world has magic. Oh, but I'm connected to the character because of learning the fact that this world has magic. Or, oh, this girl is trying to become an influencer. But I'm now connected closer to this character because of this fact, and learning that we're in modern day times and that she's a high school girl, and that she's trying to be an influencer and all of this stuff. So that is why the paywall rubs me the most, is because it's information that is world building but does not actually make me care about the character at a deeper level. I mean, so she's getting screwed 25% of her money, or 20%. I guess I can't do math. 20% of her money is being screwed from this big, soulless corporation. Welcome to the club. Like, literally, that is called life.
To be honest,
So,
like 20% is a like, as somebody who's on a platform, let me tell you, 20% is a minor inconvenience.
yeah, that's called part of doing business.
That
So
20% is first world problems. It's first platform problems.
that's a great one for it. First world problems. Yeah. So a lot of problems with this opening, and not a lot of it has. I mean, we didn't. I'd like to say, proud of us. We did not hammer on this person for writing in first person present tense.
We didn't.
I'm about to. That's why I'm patting us on the back before I do it. Look, you can write in first person present tense. Yes, Hunger Games was successful, and it is a story that can be. As I've said many times, the problem that I have with first person present tense is first person already is a very limited POV that forces you to have to not be able to write as dynamic a story as possible. Not within the story. If the story's confines can handle it, then first person is fine. Like Hunger Games. Hunger Games is a single character, single perspective, single plot story. So first person is fine. But present tense limits that even further. And you don't have access to all your verb forms. You can't seamlessly, I mean, the whole point of verb forms is to be able to manipulate time, to be able to go back in time, to the present, to the future. And with present tense, you can go back in time. It causes some awkwardness, and a lot of times you try to avoid it so that you don't tense shift. So as an example, in the paragraph that starts with "Damn girl, you look good," I always say to myself to boost my confidence. That is an awkward sentence. It's not grammatically incorrect, but I have always said this. I always say that to myself, getting some past tense into that, because she is saying this to herself now, but she also says this to herself since she's been doing this. So to say I always say to myself is an awkward way to say it. And that's what present tense causes you to do.
Isn't it called present perfect or something? I don't know. My English tenses is,
well, yeah.
Tenses work differently where I'm from.
For me, the reason why what past tense does for you is it gives you two past tenses. It gets you past perfect and past tense. And really all it means, so if you're one of the ones that are arguing that you don't want to write in past tense because then the reader knows that it already happened, I will just say this, and if it offends you, I'm sorry, you're an idiot. That is the dumbest argument that you can possibly have if the past tense is written correctly, the way modern people write past tense. Sure, Lord of the Rings is not written this way, but Lord of the Rings is omniscient and not third person free and direct discourse, or third person limited, if you want to call it that. When you're writing third person limited correctly, even though you're writing in past tense, the reader feels like it's happening right now. It's happening now. They're experiencing it now. They do not feel like it happened before now, even though you're using past tense verbs. So what it gives you is the ability to slip into past perfect, which is before now. So even though now is the past, we still have a layer below that, which is before the now of this past tense story. And then we still have present tense and future tense.
The problem with present tense is that you're stuck.
Yeah. You're limited. That's what I said.
It's very hard to put past tense into a present tense story
because it feels like a tense
shift.
Yep.
Yeah.
It either feels like a tense shift or it feels like the sentence is awkward and not written correctly, like I always say to myself.
Yes.
Like that's really what you put yourself into when you're fighting for this.
Yeah.
Plus, depending on the story that you're telling, past tense will break that story if it's the wrong story. If you've got multiple narrating characters, if you've got multiple plot arcs, if you've got subplots or parallel plots, first person will break a story like that. Same thing, and it's just exasperated. I shouldn't say same thing. It's exasperated when you try to do it in present tense. Hunger Games works really well in first person present tense because you could not get a more simple story than Hunger Games. And I don't mean every time I say that, the Hunger Games fans come at me with a pitchforks and they're like, no, it's a complex world and it's a complex. I'm like, no, those are all just plot devices that have nothing to do with story structure. That's the layer that's on top of story structure. Yes, those are great and awesome and dynamic. But the story structure, which is the only thing that matters when we're talking about tenses and POVs, you could not get a more simple story than Hunger Games. It's one character. We meet her at the beginning. She goes linearly forward. We almost have no history, no flashbacks, no side plots, no anything. We work linearly straight forward through the story until we get to the conclusion at the end of the story, and nothing. That's it. It's one nice, neat little straight line when we're talking about story structure. So first person present tense doesn't have a chance to ruin that story because of the fact of how simplistic it is. It's a line. You take that same approach and look at the structure of anything that I create, and it's a freaking spider web. And first person cannot handle a spider web, and present tense cannot handle a spider web when you're talking about the structure. So that's all I'm gonna say. Like I was proud that we didn't immediately jump on first person present tense. Although, didn't you say something about when the author wrote this in, they were like, I know you guys hate first person present tense. Please don't, didn't you say something like that?
The author was like, damn, I just watched your episode where you said, like, don't use first person present tense, and I realized I submitted first person present tense to you. But he's like, but in fairness, my story is as simple as Hunger Games. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But again, you still run into even like this, like that line. I always say to myself, you fight against putting it in past tense, even though it is past tense. That happened before this moment in time. Because either way you go, you're going to be either some people are going to think you tense shift, or some people are going to think the sentence isn't written correctly. I mean, that's the problem with this, is it really does. It's weak. It's a weak. It's not a weak storytelling POV. We have been telling first person stories, not present tense. I mean, present tense is a whole different animal, but we've been telling first person stories since you were born, since you could talk. But we don't read, this is a new phenomenon, that's been coming more and more and more prevalent in prose. It is still an awkward form of storytelling in the written language. Third person is still much more powerful, and it just conveys so much more. It's just the way it is. And again, this is my opinion. Disagree with me all you want, but I've written stories in first. I have a story published that isn't written in first person present tense.
But do be aware of what you're choosing. Okay, yeah. So I think we've spoken enough about that. Let's move on to the next few paragraphs. Okay, so we've had the whole paywall discussion, and nobody's responded to her invitation for super chats. So we have what is actually quite a good paragraph word by itself. It says crickets, and that's it. One word, one paragraph. It's great. It very clearly illustrates the absolute silence that responds to her answer.
And that's the power of using single words or fragmented sentences. It could be a couple words, but then breaking out its own paragraph makes it even more powerful.
Absolutely. In fact, I will leave a comment here that this was great.
He wrote one word that we're going to say is great.
But I mean, it's the right word in the right position. Yes. It's ideal. Yeah,
because this is not poorly written.
No, it's not. Totally it's actually the writing craft is quite good, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
which is also why we can talk more about story structure and story plot problems and everything like that, because we're not going, well, you didn't punctuate this correctly and you didn't do this one right, and you this sentence doesn't even make any sense. And so that's one of the other reasons why we're not really honing in on the
line edits
line
because we
edits
don't.
because
Yeah.
it's pretty solid.
Yeah. Okay. So I look cute. I look cute in the camera and I twiddle my hair. No super chats come in. Typical. I've been telling the meathead jocks at my high school to watch for weeks now, but they've shown no interest. I'm now desperate since we're about to graduate. Yesterday, I even went over to the environmental hippies in their blue overalls at lunch to ask them to tune in. They have absolutely no fashion sense and look completely lost. I told them if they were ready to be saved and needed me to lead them into the promised land of good looks and dressing with a purpose to tune in. My computer chimes that someone has logged on. What's this? A follower? Hi, Jane, it's John, the follower types into the chat. Good morning, John, I say into the camera. I don't recognize that name. All the environmental hippies look the same to me. No reason to distinguish one from another. Still, I am excited to have someone to talk to this morning.
Hey, Marie.
Yeah.
What is one thing, if you do on the first page of the opening of your story, is a really good indicator that you didn't start your story in the right spot?
A flashback.
Oh my goodness. So we're still on the first page and we have this massive flashback. First of all, you haven't hooked me into the character. I don't care. I'm not necessarily liking her. And now you're also giving me information about her past, which I don't care because I don't care about her. So I don't care about her past.
Yeah.
And this is tough because, the easy answer, which could easily be the wrong answer, but the easy answer would be start it yesterday at school or earlier that day if this is in the evening. It seems like it's a weekend though. But whatever. That's the easy answer. Have her actually interact with these people. Let me see her in a real world before we get to this very shallow whatever. And that actually, I'm saying it because I actually do think that could be the correct answer, because then we can get to know her and see some of her difficulties there. Maybe
if the author doesn't want to replace if the author doesn't want to move the starting point of the story, there is another way.
Oh yeah, 100%. There's probably 10 different ways. What do you got?
This whole paragraph doesn't work because it is an info dump of what happened in the past.
Yes.
If you replace that with, hi, Jane, it's John. Someone is logged in. Okay. Hi, Jane, it's John. Okay. And then
I don't recognize you.
I don't recognize it. And then he's like, you spoke to us yesterday. And you have the whole on-screen dialogue with her going, completely forgot about those guys. Didn't even occur to me. I wonder if he's wearing his blue overalls.
Right. 100%. That is one way. And that's actually the way I was thinking to do it, is you do it in the now. You let us experience it in the now about the event that happened in the past. And that's how I usually try and do my flashbacks, where I do them in a conversation to where, they get the information in that way. Because now, yes, so from a technical standpoint, is there any difference between the info dump of this and the info dump that Marie just said? No. From a technical standpoint, they're both info dumps. But we're talking about the feel of them. In one, you're dumping it on me and I'm reading it as narration. It's a bunch of information. In the other, it's an active conversation that I'm involved in.
Yes.
Both are giving me the same information. It's how they're giving me the information that makes the difference. And so therefore, I'm more engaged as the reader. And it's why I always say in everything that I do, it's always about the reader. It's not about you. It's about the reader. So it's not about you going, oh, I got it. I'm just going to give this information to the reader this way because this is an easy way for me to do it. It's which is the reader going to enjoy more? How is the reader going to enjoy getting this information? And so, yeah, that's absolutely 100% the way you do this. There's other ways that we could do it, but since we both came up with the same way, I'm just gonna leave it at that. You let it be a conversation. She's like, John who? You sat down with us at lunch yesterday. Oh crap, he's one of those environmentalist geeks. Hi John, how you doing? Like, of course I remember you. Like, then it's now engaging and interesting, and we've all done that too. We've all met somebody and that we made it. I mean, unfortunately, this happens to me way too often because I meet 20,000 people a year. But I'll meet somebody again, and when we met, I had a huge impact on them, but they were a face of 10,000 people that I met that day. And so they didn't have the same impact on me, not because they weren't as valuable of a human being as me. It's just that I was overloaded by the amount of people I met that day, and they met me.
But yeah, so absolutely. I mean, we've all done that. So that could be a very relatable experience.
So I want to do some line edits here. There's one thing that I have a big problem with, and it literally is right behind the one thing that we said perfect. So you have crickets as a paragraph by itself. It's so great. It's so awesome. It's so powerful. Then you have a sentence. I look into the camera. I twiddle my hair. I look cute in the camera. I twiddle my hair. I hate that because, again, it's just so shallow and it shows her pettiness without giving me anything. But it's the next sentence. No super chats come in, comma, typical.
Yes.
That would have been so much more powerful. It doesn't need to be its own paragraph here because you don't want to do things too much because then they start losing their impact. But definitely no super chats come in, period. Typical, period. We use punctuation to control the flow of the story. When you have a single word or a fragmented sentence, they consume that as one piece of information. And while, yes, typical is a fragmented sentence, it doesn't have a subject, it doesn't have an action. This is creative writing. Creative is the first word in creative writing. We're not writing essays where we have to be grammatically correct. We are writing creatively, which means we are going to take creative licenses with grammar to serve the purpose of the story. So no super chats come in. I swallow that. Typical. I swallow that. That puts so much impact and so much emphasis on that word that doesn't happen if it's lowercase and a comma. So use punctuation to your advantage. What else did I have in here? And I talked about I look cute in the camera and I twiddle my hair, but it's kind of redundant from stuff that we talked about before. What's this? My computer chimes that someone has logged in. What's this? A follower? This is a pet peeve of mine. It is definitely a personal thing. You definitely do not have to follow this. Maria is a little less concerned with this than I am. I hate asking questions in narration because it feels like you're asking the reader a question and the reader's like, I don't know. I'm not writing this book. Why are you asking me a question? This one isn't egregious, though. So I do want to say that this one isn't like, oh my goodness. But what this one is it's not egregious in the question standpoint. What it's egregious in is an author intrusion. So it's not personal. She didn't say this. The POV character is not going to go, what's this? A follower? If she is, have her say it or have her think it. But in narration, it feels like there's now a third party like that, like in a cartoon. If you ever watch the Pink Panther and they always have the narrator because he can't talk and you got the narrator off screen that you can't see, and the Pink Panther is walking down, he walks by something and the narrator goes, what's this? And the Pink Panther's like, ooh, what is that? And that's what it feels like to me, that some third party has come in and did a voiceover for this moment in time.
So I don't like this, but for a different reason. I use questions.
There's just a lot of hate on this one.
Well, I don't like the question. Like I don't like the question there, but for a different reason. So I use questions in pure narration because, and mostly I do it in Sangwell Chronicles. I do it a little bit elsewhere, but mostly I do it in Sangwell. But I do it there because that story is written in free and indirect.
Right.
Okay. Free and indirect does not separate internal thoughts by means of italics or anything else. It just puts them right there in narration. But like part of narration, it's just part of it's not like omniscient where you say he thought. You just plop the internal thought right there. Right. And And that is why I use questions like that, because they are actually the character's internal question. Yeah.
But
What
to
I
me,
don't like. Hmm?
oh, go ahead.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
you would put that in italics potentially and like make them
Right. It
into.
would be, I would, if I was going to do this, to me, it is so much more personal to drop in an inner monologue and have the character go, "What's this? A follower?" Because then I feel something. When it's in narration, me as a reader, I don't feel anything. I feel like you're just giving me information. And so I'm not connected to the character. When the character asks the question to the world, then I feel like I'm actually watching someone or experiencing someone doing something. So I know when a character in the story says, "What's this? A follower?" They're not talking to me. They are absolutely talking to the world around them. And so that's the big difference to me. When it's in narration, this is information for me. And so therefore, when there's a question, that must mean you're asking me a question. Whereas if the character asks the question, they're obviously not talking to me because they're in their
I,
world.
I will say that you have put questions into narration here and there, but
I do.
no.
I break every rule that I tell you not to do. I will break because it's creative writing. It's not about
but
the only ones that I
that's
won't.
yeah.
The only ones that I won't are like I die on the hill of speech tags. Although I have a story that's published that has speech tags in it because there was no way to write it without it. So I will break every rule, but it works like this. If you don't know the rules, you're going to break them and you're going to break them poorly and you're going to piss people off. If you do know the rules and you know them incredibly well, then when you break them, no one will even notice. And so
So okay, so
that's
I'll tell you why I don't like this question. Yeah, I don't like this question because we are in first person. So I assume that every word of narration is basically what the character's thinking. Okay? And I would not like a follower, the reaction, the answer to the question is fine. Because that
right.
does sound
But
like something.
that's my actual other problem.
But the question, I mean, you've just heard the thing chime. Like it doesn't.
Right. That was
It
my
doesn't
last
fit.
problem. My last problem is that what's this weakens a follower.
Yes.
My computer chimed that someone had logged in. A follower. Like that is so much more powerful. It takes the wind out of the sails when you have what's this. So again, it's about control. It's about controlling what the reader's experiencing as they're experiencing them. And you do that with punctuation, but you also do that with sentence structure and paragraph structure and the words that you use. That, it's all of that. The other problem that I have is the next sentence. "Hi, Jane, it's John," in quotes, makes me read that as if it's being said out loud. And then I find out that I was wrong. And I don't like as a reader to find out that I was wrong. I should never be wrong because your job is to make sure that I'm right. Your job is to make sure that I read things the way that they're supposed to be read, which is why we put quotes around dialogue, because in my head, I read "Hi, Jane, it's John" differently than "I don't recognize the name," because I don't recognize the name is narration. And so therefore I read it as narration, and anything in quotes, I read as if it's said out loud. Anything that's italicized and obviously, inner monologue, I read as if it's being said inside the character's head. So then when I find out that, that isn't the case, now I'm upset. So first of all, I wouldn't, this is creative writing and there is no standard for this. There is no standard way of, well, then how do you put the words in? There is no standard way. That hasn't been standards yes, there's a Chicago manual style, and yes, it has certain things, and no, I don't follow everything in it. Because some of it's just antiquated and out of date, and we just don't do it that way anymore, and they just haven't caught up because they're old fogies. But standards have evolved because this is the way we as a society have evolved to use them. So I would probably do something like, words appeared on the screen in the chat box. And then I would just, write, "Hi, Jane, it's John." Just no question mark, no quotes around or anything like that.
So
Because by putting the tag before it, by letting me know that it's being typed, then the next sentence.
I agree, but if you're going to have a lot of text in this, and this feels like a story that's going to have dialogue with text, I feel like you should do what we did with the telepathy and
Yes.
figure out a punctuation.
Yeah. And that was my second thing.
Punctuation. Yeah.
Right. That's my second thing. If you're going to do it a lot, then you come up with your own formatting for it, and you train the reader that every time you see me format something in this way, you will know that this is going on. And then once you've trained them, you don't mention it anymore. So the one example I always use is my inner monologue. If you've ever read me, you know I use a ton of inner monologue, and it always is the same way. It's in italics. It's in first person because it is monologue, dialogue. And more importantly, it's in a paragraph by itself with no other narration at all. My inner monologue is always by itself. So if you ever see a paragraph, whether it's 1 word or 50 words, and it's italicized and it's by itself, then bam, 100% it's inner monologue. However, I do, even in the 3rd book of a series, I still teach them the first couple of times they hit it at the beginning of the book. I will still have something like, "I can't believe this is happening." Next paragraph, the thought really rankled his, whatever. I will teach my reader a couple times in the beginning that this is a thought, and then I never mention it again.
I think,
and we do the same thing with Magic Fall.
For anybody who's wondering about this, go check out our episode where we discuss, and I will link it in the information card, which will be somewhere around here if you're on YouTube. But go check out our episode where we talk about standard punctuation and when to break it. Because there we actually use telepathy, and we've got stars in place of quotation marks to represent ghosts' telepathy. So what I suggested here for this author, because it's text, you can potentially do something where you don't close the text, right? Where you put it in a paragraph and you just start it with like a hash, because a hash is a...
I personally hate the hashtag. But again, this is where you can get a little bit. So I always say punctuation is not for you, it's for the reader. But when you're doing something that's not standard, it is for you. You have to enjoy the look of it. And you have to, so like in the Genesis saga, there's a race that doesn't speak English, and I wasn't going to do what Tolkien did and write a paragraph in Elvish and then write the exact same paragraph in English, because I'm not going to make up a language. I'm not that smart, and I'm not that, motivated. I'm way too lazy for that. So as a plot device, the kid the POV that's in the area has a necklace that translates it in his head. So once I set that up for the reader, what I did was I just actually used a different font. I used this script kind of font. And then I just write all of their, because they also speak English. Like they will speak to him in English, but then they'll speak to each other in their language. But he knows what they're saying because the magical amulet translates it. So therefore the reader knows what they're saying, even though he doesn't tell them he knows what they're saying. And so
I will just issue one warning about that, which is if you, lots of readers, more readers than not, consume your books in EPUBs. And reflowable text.
It's still reflowable, but you are right. When we moved to the digital, now this was through a publisher, so it wasn't me doing this, but they were like, "Oh yeah, no, we don't want to do this," and I was like, "Well, you're going to," and so they did.
You can.
The ebook has a different text.
Yeah, the reader can literally overwrite your font.
Yes.
Yeah, and then it's gone.
Yes.
Yeah. So be aware of that in terms of using different fonts.
Yeah. But that's them actually going in and changing it to something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, they figured it out somehow. I don't know. I wasn't a part of that, but you are correct. You do ebooks, the control of what the page looks like, what the font looks like, what the size of it, that's all actually in the reader's control. Whereas in a physical book, obviously it's just printed, so they have no control over that at all. But yeah, that was because I mean, this is back when ebooks were just getting started. So I know they had a nightmare. It's much easier, I would assume, now to
Yeah,
have customized
you
text.
can have different fonts. You can have different. You can do all of that. The problem is like it doesn't quite allow for full differentiation. And the other problem is that the reader can literally change it. They
Yeah.
can make it bigger. They can make it smaller. They can change the font, etc. So yeah, but either way, like it doesn't matter what punctuation you do. If you're going to use text messages a lot, figure out some kind of punctuation.
Yeah, if I'm using text messaging a lot, I actually, and I don't write anything modern, but I've seen it done this way and I like this the best. So they would actually give it its own paragraph. They would center it on the page and they would, you know, give it a font that like Arial or, you know, whatever the Courier, that's what I was looking for,
Yeah.
where it looks like a typewriter or whatever.
Yeah.
So they would do that with that. But even just giving it its own paragraph and centering it is so
Yeah.
different for, you know, from a format standpoint that the reader is like, you know, this is in the middle of my page. Why is this in the middle? Oh, because it's text. And so like if you had something like this where words appear on the screen as the follower types, and then you have that as this, you've trained me that this is typing. So if you do this a couple times in the beginning of your story, eventually, rather quickly, you know, after two, three, four times, you don't have to do it anymore. You just shove a thing to the center of the page, and the reader will always just now know, oh, this is being typed, this is being typed, this is being typed, because you've already trained me that this is what you're going to do for typed text. So we can break formatting. You can even break standard formatting. I don't think you should do it like I know authors that will put parentheses around all their dialogue because they think it looks better. Like I'm sorry, it doesn't, and no one likes it, and just stop. But you know, but they liked it better. But again, to me, the formatting is not for you; it's for the reader. And so, you know, but for non-standard stuff, you pretty much are on your own. It's the Wild West. I mean, how do you write text, you know, so that somebody is texting in it? Well, that's the Wild West. Do whatever you're going to do. But at the end of the day, it comes down to Drake's rule of 10. Get 10 people who don't care about you to read it, and then ask them specifically, I formatted this thing this way. How did that make you feel while you were reading it? Open it to question, make them give you information. And if 8 out of 10 of them are like, oh, no, I completely understood it, I completely thought it was fine, then you're good. You're good. If 7 out of 10 say that, but 3 out of 10 didn't like it, you're not good. Do you want a 4 out of 5 stars, or do you want a 3.5 out of 5 stars? Like, we all want 4 out of 5 stars minimum. So if you can't please, like if you're putting a hashtag and it looks good to you, but then you give it to 10 of us and we're like, oh, that hashtag bothers me, I don't like it. If there are 6 of us that said that and 4 that were like, oh no, it's fine with that, understood, then you need to change it. It's just the way it is. If I'm the only guy that's like, oh, I hated the hashtag, and everyone else is like, it's fine, then you need to keep it. And you need to say, you know, forget you, Drake. You're the out. You know, you'll give me less of a star, but the rest of them are getting me 4.5 out of 5. So I'm fine with that. So, because you can't please everybody.
Yep. We've got the environmental hippie on the line. Okay. Thanks for stopping by yesterday at lunch. You never paid attention to us or our cause before, but we could use your help, John types. Use my help? What could these environmentalists use my help for? All I've seen them do is chain themselves to the tree in the middle of the quad. Seems like they've got it all handled for themselves. Still, I'm interested. What do you... Jane, Mom interrupts. She comes bursting into my room, almost throwing my door off its hinges. Grrr, what is it, Mom? Can't you see I'm trying to promote myself over here? I retort. Jane, it's time for you to get ready for your community service. Remember, it's important to volunteer and give back. Do you want to help in the soup kitchen today or pick up trash at the beach? She asks. Why would I care about cleaning up the beach? It all just goes into the ocean anyways, I reply smarmily. Chime. John types. Ask your mom if you can help join our environmental protest today. Yeah.
All right.
I have a lot of line edits here.
Yeah. Well, but let me go back to one thing before we go on.
Yeah.
Let's look at the line that starts with Jane, 3 exclamation points, and I know that's going to be a pet peeve of yours, but let's just leave. I'm going to leave that for you. Mom interrupts, period. She comes bursting into my room, almost throwing the door off its hinges.
Wrong way around.
So here's a great example of why I hate speech tags so much. So first of all, the interrupts. We have three. First of all, you have an M dash, and it's not really an M dash, so you got to use an M dash. That's not an M dash. So the M dash is the longer one. An M dash in dialogue means that the dialogue was interrupted. That's what it means. What do you? I've been interrupted. You don't have to then tell the reader that they were interrupted because you just showed it. That is literally what punctuation can do for you. Same thing with 3 exclamation points. So the interrupts is already rubbing me wrong because of the fact that the text and the formatting already shows me that it's interrupted. But here's the thing. 2 words are just worthless. So Jane, mom bursts into my room, almost throwing my door off its hinges. It's so much more active. It's so much more engaging. I don't need the slowdown of mom interrupts. I don't need that she comes. Just have her do it. Jane, mom bursts into my room. Boom, right there. You know.
In fact, I would do it this way around. I would say the door slams open.
You could do that.
Jane.
I know that hurt you to write that.
Bursts into my room.
So I'd actually put that with the first part of it, because you don't want to double dip on the door anyway. So I would put no, just the part that you're adding. Mom burst in the room can go after the text, but since the door is already being activated, then it being ripped off its hinges needs to be all in one thought. The door slams open, nearly ripping off its hinges, probably, or something like that. Yes, I just wrote an ly adverb. And then Jane, mom bursts into my room, or something like that. I probably wouldn't do that. So for me, I like the dialogue. I mean, I'm okay with this because of the fact that the door slamming open is also an interruption of speech. But I like, what do you, Jane, Jane. I like that to be the next thing as the thing that interrupts, because you have dialogue interrupting dialogue. And since the dialogue is there, I would do that. Now, if there is no dialogue, like, what do you, my window burst open, sending leaves and debris flying in, because it was hit by a tree limb or something like that, then there is no dialogue. So it would literally just be the action.
The reason why I want the door opening first is because the dialogue, that is what happens first.
Not necessarily.
You put the dialogue, the thing is to put the dialogue first and then have the door intro.
So that's just the flow of the information. They're both right. I'm sorry. The door could be the first thing that happens, but she could scream Jane outside before she gets to the door. So I'm reading it. So in the first one, the Jane,
To me,
so the Jane, the Jane, if the dialogue is first, it means that I hear that and then the door bursts open. Okay. So that's why I see it in my head and I think it works fine. That's why I said I don't mind you doing it this way, because either one could interrupt the conversation, either one. But normally, as a parent, and I'm furious at my child, as I get close to their room, I'm already screaming and showing my displeasure before I kick that door open. I don't usually, unless I'm trying to catch them doing something.
Maybe I'm too Finnish. My parents have never shouted outside my door.
Especially for my youngest son. My oldest son, I never really, punished that much, but the youngest one, man. So I would already, I've already found the crayons written on the wall and, just scrabbled, and I'm just furious. And as I'm walking down that hallway and he's cowering in his bedroom, I'm already starting to show my displeasure and like, I'm coming in there and so I know what you did. So I'm screaming before I get to that door. But again, both, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Both are right. It just depends on how you want to show the scene. But that's why, like I said, when you wrote it with the door slams open, I had no problem with that. Because yes, that's the thing that is interrupting the speech.
Mm.
So either way you want to do it is fine. But you are correct. Um, you know, it, we don't need mom interrupts. All right. So I know you want to talk about one thing else in this line. I just know it's one of your pet peeves.
I want to talk about, well, I want to talk about a few things, but I really want to talk about, remember, it's important to volunteer and give back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was actually talking about that same paragraph, but yeah, we can go there because that's also, go ahead. This is a pet peeve of both of ours.
If you start a sentence with remember, 9 times out of 10, you are engaging in as you know Bob dialogue. I'm going to invent a thing, I'm going to reach through the internet, and I'm going to smack your fingers.
Yeah. Remember, Marie, me and you are humans, and humans need to breathe while we're talking. So while we're doing this podcast, don't forget to breathe. Also, in this case, it's not even like that's rampant in fantasy.
Yes.
Remember, Finn, me and you are elfins, and elfins can only eat honey. And Finn's like, yeah, I know. I was born this way. I'd love to have a cheeseburger. Why don't you shut up? Not only is there that, but here's the really egregious part of this. It's also like a couple things that we've talked about. It's overwritten. And that's really the term for, I should have said it earlier, when you write something that weakens the writing instead of enhances the writing, you're overwriting. And so, Jane, it's time for you to get ready for your community service. Do you want to help in the soup kitchen today or pick up trash on the beach? It has so much more impact without the remember it's important to volunteer and give back. Like, not only is it as you know dialogue, but it also cheapens the next line.
Yeah. It's completely unnecessary. So the thing that up here that still irks me is the fact that there is a triple exclamation.
See, that's what I knew was one of your pet peeves.
Okay. I'm not saying there is never a place for a double exclamation mark, but it feels very egregious here. Like,
here's my rule. One exclamation point is enough for almost everything. However, if it is something that is building, so like in the 3rd chapter of Genesis, and the crowd that is standing in the screens and they're getting louder and louder and louder, and they're chanting the same thing over. They're chanting Kith, Kith, Kith. The first time I write Kith, 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 it's written with one exclamation point. The second time I write it, they're louder, and I have explained that they are louder. So I capitalize Kith and put one exclamation point. Kith, Kith, Kith. And then I describe how they get even louder. And the next time I write that line, it's capitalized with 3 exclamation points on each, because that shows this building of yeah. And without that, if I had just kept them all lowercase with one exclamation point, even though in between each one, I talk about how the volume is going up, I don't think it has the same impact as showing that the volume is increasing. So we use punctuation and structure and everything to control the flow of information and how the reader consumes it. So by doing Kith, Kith, Kith with one exclamation point in the first, talk about it getting louder, and then doing capitalized Kith, the whole word being capitalized, Kith, Kith, Kith with one exclamation point, and then going to capitalize Kith, Kith, Kith with 3 exclamation points on each, it makes the reader want to read it louder, to want to hear it louder in their head. To start off with that, there's no difference between this Jane with 3 exclamation. I'm not going to read it any louder in my head if it was just Jane exclamation point. It's still the same level of volume to me. You haven't built anything. You haven't earned anything for those 3 exclamation. And I think that's the thing that a lot of writers do. They go, oh, well, I'm going to do 3 because they're going to read it even louder in there. No, they're not. There's no reason for them to. Why would they read this any different than any other time that there's an exclamation point? Because it's just that. It's just, I'm going to read it out loud. You haven't built anything with it. And I think you have to build to the 3 exclamation points. And that may be the only time that I used 3 exclamation points in my entire writing career was in that one scene because I was building to it. I was in rapid succession, allowing the crowd to get louder and louder and louder.
There's an I retort over here that doesn't need to be there. It doesn't need to exist. It does nothing.
So technically, this is one example of where you can get away with talking heads. Grr, what is it, Mom? Can't you see I'm trying to promote myself over here? Jane, it's time for you to get ready for community service. Do you want to, like, literally, if you had no she asks and no I retort, there's no difference, because the I retort is only trying to show me that it's I'm speaking, and the she asks is only trying to show that it's Mom speaking. But there's literally no way that I'm going to confuse who said those things. Now, I hate talking heads. I think you should never have a line of dialogue by itself unless it's more powerful for it to be by itself. Again, that's always my rule. So there's no emotion in this. We didn't talk about that yet. That is something that I was going to talk about, toward the ends of this, but I can talk about it here. First of all, this is a pet peeve of mine. I hate onomatopoeias. So, chime, exclamation point, grr, exclamation point. Those are things that I would not do because there's better ways to do them. But what is it, Mom? I whirled around in my chair, giving my mother a dirty look. Can't you see I'm trying to promote myself over here? Like, now there's action involved in it. There is emotion involved in it. Jane, my mother's tone took on that lecturing, or my mother's voice took on that lecturing tone. It's time for your community service or whatever. I'm just making this stuff up on the fly. So there's ways, and again, I'm not using I don't use speech tags, so it's weird to me to say the word said in narration. So I just naturally go to this stuff because, again, I've been doing it for 30 years. Adding action and emotions are where I get my speech tags from. So these are 2 paragraphs that if you did talking heads, it wouldn't be egregious because of the fact that everyone knows that it's the I talking in the first one. Everybody knows it's the mother talking in the next one. They're the only 2 characters in the room. They're obviously on opposite sides of an argument. It's very easy to see what the 2 sides of the argument are. No one is going to get confused by this ever. Talking head it, whatever. It's lazy writing in my opinion, but there's nothing wrong with it. Going a step further and giving me some actions and emotions and what's going on while they're actually having this argument just makes the read more interesting.
And then here we have a John types again, which if you go for if you went for that like centralized thing, you could swipe this and put this in the center.
You'd want to make it smaller, so you'd come up with a little format for as in you wouldn't want to use up the whole thing like that. So you'd cut it in the middle, make it 2 lines, or even 3, depending on how wide you want it. It needs to set apart. It cannot stretch out to the same
something
length.
like that.
Yeah. You might even want to justify it, instead of so the third one, which justified across it. You know what I mean?
I don't think you can justify if you've got line breaks.
Oh, you're right. You can't. Yeah. So you'd have to set the margins on it. Yeah. And then you
make
can
it
justify
a column.
it. Yeah. So that comes down to paragraph styles, which we've talked a little bit about paragraph styles and stuff, but that is just a formatting thing that you need to do because not everybody's using Word, so you have to figure it out. But in Word, what you'd do is you'd set up a paragraph style for it. You'd set the paragraph indents in to the levels that you want. And then you would just pick that paragraph style every time you wanted to write this, and it would automatically do everything, and you make it justified. So, but yeah, something like this. So if this is like this, obviously we have the John types that's taken out, so it's going to move that top line over a little bit. But if you can imagine it without that, it's going to be nice and centered, and no one is going to, do this. The chime. Here's why I don't like the chime. I don't like onomatopoeias because most onomatopoeias can be verbs. So if you wrote something like, my laptop chimed again, the word chimed as a verb is also going to give me a sound. So, or maybe chirped or whatever. There's other ways to do it. So I don't like onomatopoeias. That is a pet peeve of mine. It might be because I also write comic books, and that medium does get onomatopoeias, whereas prose doesn't. But that's just my thing. I like my laptop chimed again or chirped again or whatever, and then that, because you do need something. You can't just come out. You can't have this argument between Mom and Jane and then just come out with some dialogue. Even if you have the formatting right, you can't just throw that formatting in there. It's going to throw the readers off. So I'm very sensitive to making sure, again, I never want my readers to be wrong in how they're reading my story. So that's why I do agree with at least the chime before that, because that lets the reader know that something else has happened and we're coming to something else. Again, I wouldn't use chime. I would use my laptop chimes again, or dinged again or chirped again or whatever. So anyway.
Right, and then we might as well finish this up because we are like right at the end. So environmental protest, ugh, those are so annoying. They close down the main highway and make my Uber ride take twice as long to get to the mall. Still, I'd prefer that to being seen picking up trash at the beach, wearing plastic gloves instead of tanning in my bikini. Sorry, Mom, I've got other plans. I'm going to head to the environmental protest down the street with my classmate, John. Oh, that's good to hear. I'm just glad you'll be outside and actually helping to make the world a better place instead of just putting on lipstick and talking to yourself in front of your computer all day, Mom replies. Mom, you're so embarrassing, I yell. I slam my laptop shut and storm off, ready to meet John at the protest. I think we've said a lot on speech tags, so I'm just going to kill that I yell. It does nothing.
Nothing. A lot of exclamation points, like, oh, yeah. Like, why would your mom do that?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, that's good to hear. I just don't see her screaming that. But there's just a lot of exclamation points everywhere. So
I feel like the exclamation marks are having a party.
Yeah, throughout this entire thing, there was a ton of exclamation points. Again, if the writer is listening, which I assume that they will be, because we're gluttons for punishments, all of us. Every writer is just a masochist. I just believe that. That's just a part of our DNA. The writing is actually good. I know we're really hammering on a lot of things, but that's our job. That's what we do. This is what I do in my writers group. None of this has to do with you. Like I said, I had a creative writing professor that I loved. Again, I've never been to college, so she had me come in and teach for her, but I loved her because of a lot of the mentalities. But she used to have the class for the first month of class. Every day they would stand up and they would hold something they wrote in one hand and they'd put their hand on their chest on the other, and they would shake their writing and they would go, "This is my writing," and then they'd tap their chest and go, "This is me. When someone critiques my writing, they're not critiquing me." And she'd have them repeat that like 2 or 3 or 4 times at the beginning of every class for the first month. And that's just it. It's all about how can we, this is a widget. That's the other thing. I know it's hard when people critique your stuff, but I think the thing that really helped me get over that, oh, I'm being personally attacked here and you're saying my soul sucks, is to go, oh, wait, no, this is just a product for sale. And you're giving me advice that will make it better for the end customer. Like, why would I ever be mad at you for improving something that I'm going to, hopefully make money off of? Like, that would be dumb. That's self, sabotaging. Like, no, I'm going to definitely sell this car that has 3 wheels and one doesn't roll at all. And just because you said you should make all 4 roll, that's just, screw you. I want this one to be drug as it, drives down the road. It's much better this way. Like, no, it isn't. And you're not going to sell it because one of your reels don't roll. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. So I don't like I know, as you said, we did pick on a lot of writing craft stuff, but it actually is quite clean and quite well written, which is why we could focus in on some of the more like plot stuff and so on. From a writing craft perspective, what I would work on is the dialogue tags and the emotion.
So yeah, that's the nice thing about this piece is it is further down that path. Yes, there's things wrong with what I write. Anyone can edit me. Anyone. You're not going to edit me on my punctuation. You're not
Yeah.
going to edit me on my speech tags. You're not going to edit me on, whatever. But I occasionally will do, like, I mean, I've mentioned some of I use as way too much. I still do it to this day. I still, everybody will slip into telling from time to time. Like these things it's just, you can't get away from them forever.
We had that sterling moment of like the flashback.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I did it. That's true.
Yeah.
I did the first chapter that I wrote in Magic Falls or Magic Fall. The first thing Marie said to me when she read it was like, so, and I think it was on the second page, but it might have been at the end of the first page. But she was
Yeah.
like, you started this in the wrong spot. And this paragraph right here kind of proves that if you had just started 5 minutes, because it really was a flashback to 5 minutes ago. And I was like, oh, you are so right. But I was in the moment and, I'm writing and I don't notice it. And I had read it a couple of times before I sent it to Marie. And, in my mind, that's the reason why we need other people to critique us, is because you are too close to your own writing. You
Yeah.
need somebody that isn't close to your writing and say, so this is something you did that you should probably think about. And I was like, oh, wow. Yes, that is it. So yes, Mr. Writer of this page who, wrote flashback on your first page, I literally just did it too.
Yeah.
So it happens to
And
all of us.
it does happen to all of us. So
Which is
that was
why
our
my
edit.
beta team is over 100 people in my beta team,
Yeah.
because I like a lot of eyes, because I make a lot of mistakes, because I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. And so I need other people. Even though I know the rules, doesn't mean that I don't, there's a lot. There's a lot to remember. There's a lot to keep up with. And plus, I'm trying to make up a whole world and be characters that I'm not and all this other great stuff. So there's a lot. There's a lot to it. It's tough. It's hard. Thank you for sending us that piece. Thank you for being brave enough to let us do that live. If anybody else wants to do this is something we do from time to time. We're not going to do a ton of them. This isn't a critique show, but since it is a show on writing, at least every few months we should do one of these. So if you feel that your soul can handle being beat up on the internet, I mean, we don't mention who you are. We change the names of your characters, all that stuff. So you're anonymous. Only you know that we're talking about you, no one else, unless you tell other people. But yeah, there's one thing I want to kind of advertise before, because it may be in play by the time although we don't have a lot in the can, so I don't know when this episode's going to drop.
This goes out next week.
Okay, so when you guys hear this next week, in the future for me, probably won't have it. It's probably going to be March-ish before we can get this done. But I am launching a new thing that a lot of my fans are very excited about. If you guys are interested, I'm going to start doing a subscription model called Writing with Drake. And it's going to be blocks of time. There's going to be 2 levels of it. There's going to be a membership fee, and you can join anytime you want in any of these blocks. The blocks will rotate, and I will be taking feedback from people to see which blocks work for them. We'll do some on the weekends. We'll do some during the week. We'll do some in the evenings. We'll do some in the mornings. But it'll probably be like a 4-hour block where I'm writing. And everyone will log in. We will basically write for 45 minutes. I'll silence everybody, and you do your thing. And then we will unmute, and anybody can ask any questions. Like if you ran into a question, if you have a problem, like right there live while you're writing. And we'll only take about 15 minutes to talk about whatever. So obviously, depending on how many people are in the room, I won't be able to get to everything because I'm only going to limit to 15 minutes. And then I'm going to silence everybody, and we're going to write for another 45 minutes and, come back in 45 minutes. And if you have questions, we can then talk about them, whatever. I will have the chat function running so you guys can chat back and forth to each other. Although if you do that, you are defeating kind of the purpose of writing for 45 minutes because you're paying attention to other things, but if you want to play on YouTube or, do your Instagram while you're supposed to be writing, that's on you. That's not me. And then for members of that, so the membership is probably going to be about $15 a month is what we're thinking. For members of that, I will be running a couple Writing with Drakes that are limited. So they will be an additional fee that you will pay if you want to join one of these, but I'm probably going to limit them to between 5 and 10 people max in the room at the time. So that will be a much more focused, it'll be the same thing. There's no difference. It's just that these will be for that. And there's a couple of reasons why I'm doing this. Normally it would, like originally when I came with this idea, I didn't want to charge anything for it, but The biggest reason why I'm doing it is that, and somebody is the one who convinced me of this. If it's a paid thing, it will actually help you guys out more than if it was free. Because if you're paying for this monthly service, the whole point of this is to get you guys to write more, to get you guys to actually put words on paper more often than you're not. And so it was basically, because when I pitched this idea to my marketing team, they were like, yeah, you're going to definitely charge for this, not because you need the money, but because it will force the people that are paying for this to actually take it serious and actually spend that time writing, and not, cruising Facebook and Instagram while they're during that 45, because like, no, I'm paying for this, I need to work on it. And so it is going to be a subscription model. Hoping it's going to start in about a month. We got to get the programming done. We're not going to, I originally pitched about doing it just like on a Patreon or something like that, but they were like, nope, you have your own platform. You're not using someone else's platform. That's what you pay for. So we will just make this for you. And once we get it done, we'll get it done. So it is going to be through Drake U. And when it's available, obviously I'll be talking about it, but look for that coming down the pipe. I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be cool. Plus, it'll also make me, have to sit there during those times and write during those times. Although, especially these last couple of days, I had a rough February, but these last couple of days, I mean, I didn't stop working until after 10 o'clock last night. So I got a lot on my plate and I'm trying to get some stuff done. But all right. On that note,
that was our show, our live edit show for this week. And we will see you soon for another one.
Bye.